I'm going to keep it real with you today. And I'm going to, this is not scripted, not structured. It's just me talking to you about stress and entrepreneurship and how to deal with it.
These are the proven direct response marketing, copywriting, and entrepreneurship success strategies you can use today to write your own ticket and create the life you want. I am Roy Furr, and this is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Now, here's today's breakthrough.
Okay, so I've been going through some stress recently that has nothing to do with work, and covering the details in this particular episode is not going to be particularly useful. And at the same time, I can talk about stress in the context of entrepreneurship and how it's impacting me and how it impacts you. And importantly, what strategies we have to deal with it. So when we feel stress, and it doesn't matter where it comes from, right? But when we feel stress, we tend to lean into whatever coping mechanisms we have developed through life. And honestly, my coping mechanisms aren't the best. And for most people, unless you bring just a ton of mindfulness into it, and you were fortunate enough to be exposed to people who actually understood good coping mechanisms for stress, your coping mechanisms probably aren't any better than many of mine. And so for some of us, coping ends up being drinking, drugs, whatever. For some of us, coping ends up being food. It ends up being, some other self-destructive habit. For some of us, coping ends up being things like obsession about, maybe on the other side, like junk eating can be one coping mechanism, and a different kind of eating disorder can be another coping mechanism. Things like excessive exercise can be a coping mechanism. And for entrepreneurs, for many of us, things like slipping into workaholism and just getting completely losing ourselves intentionally in the work can be a coping mechanism. Things like diving down the rabbit hole of social media or other even worse internet distractions. Things like video games, where you can just get completely lost in that experience, or just binge watching TV because you're stressed out. All of these things are negative coping mechanisms, because when you pay attention to what actually happens, right? Let's say you're using video games as a coping mechanism, and the same analysis can apply no matter what you do. So let's say you're using video games as a coping mechanism. You have the stress, dealing with the stress, right? And you're struggling to deal with it. And so you go disappear into video games for a few hours. Well, at the end of that, number one, you didn't make any positive progress towards actually overcoming the source of stress or dealing with the source of stress. And number two, you probably feel worse about yourself because you didn't make any positive progress, and now you've just put off that source of stress for even longer. And it becomes this vicious cycle where, we feel stressed and we do things to momentarily alleviate the stress that don't actually deal with the stress. And then we feel more stressed, and we feel this sense of shame and pain and agony. that comes from knowing that we could have actually done something to deal with the stress, but we didn't. And then the stress is still there, but there's this added stress of, oh, I didn't do what I need to do to deal with it. And what ends up happening throughout this, and the way that this can really start to impact your work is, unless workaholism, like, okay, so maybe you get great at compartmentalizing and you blow up your life because you let workaholism be your outlet, and you're incredibly successful at work because doing work is how you deal with stress. But for me, what I found is that, especially when it comes to creative work, deep work, work where I need to be in the flow zone to actually do a good job of it, when I'm dealing with stress, what ends up happening is I just can't get started. I just can't start on that work. And it ends up feeling much worse at the end because, I'm feeling stressed, and so I can't get started on the work. So I do something to distract myself, and, then I'm falling behind on work or not accomplishing what I want to accomplish. And the stress just amplifies because what started as a stressor outside of the work environment comes into the work environment. And suddenly I'm dealing with just like these layers of stress that are all piling onto each other. And when that happens, everything kind of just keeps spiraling until I can't take it anymore. So how do you effectively deal with stress? Number one of the things that happens when number one, you actually need to name it and reframe it. So one of the things that happens when we get stressed is we tend to look at what's right in front of us and make that the problem instead of the stressful feelings, right? The stressful feelings get focused on whatever is right in front of us. And so, for example, you could be feeling stressed. Well, a good example, let's say you have a stress coming from outside of work, whatever it is, right? Some stress coming from outside of work. And then you start to try and get your work done, but you're not having, you're not having success in going after the work that you need to get done. And so suddenly you're like angry at your work. You're blaming customers or clients or bosses or whoever, right? You're blaming somebody else. You're saying, oh, they're stupid, or, Facebook is stupid for whatever advertising change, or Google's stupid for whatever advertising change, or, you get angry at all of these things that happen to be right in front of you when you're not confronting the stress. And so when you do decide, hey, it's time to like figure out what's going on here, if you're able to bring awareness to, oh, I feel stressed, I'm having trouble dealing with this, and this stress is a sign that I need help, I need support, I need protection, I need somebody in my corner, I need to do things differently, I need to make some kind of change, I need to do something, right? But I need to manage the stress as a thing first. Like, I need to direct my attention towards the stress. I need to find what's going to allow me to bring calm, what's going to allow me to bring presence to that feeling, and accept that, like, hey, I'm feeling this feeling, and it may come out as anger, it may come out as wanting to run and hide, it may come out as depressed feelings, it may come out as inability to focus, it may come out as any number of different symptoms. But what we face is that this stress is this like many-headed monster, right? And if we're just looking at the heads, we can't say, okay, here's the heart of the issue. And if I can get to the heart of the issue, that's what I need to do in order to solve it. So, number one, we need to bring awareness to that stress. Number two, we need to accept, hey, this is not working for me. Something's not working for me. It's creating this stress. Number three, we need to reframe everything that's going on around, hey, all of these things that are happening are showing me that I am feeling stressed. Showing me that something is happening. Something is causing me to feel this stress. Something is creating this stress reaction in me. And then number four, we need to find effective regulation strategies for the stressors in our life. We need to, and sometimes it's hard because we're freaking humans, and being a human and a living being and an emotional being is so dynamic that, and we're also dealing with the baggage of decades of life before us that have contributed to our ability or inability to manage stress. And so, what we need to do though is we need to find ways to regulate the stress. We need to find ways what brings us back to calm, what helps us work out this stress, what helps us release the stress. And for some of us, it can be very different, right? For one person, it could be, I need to listen to loud, angry music. And from day to day, it can be different too. Sometimes that's me. I have some particular favorite bands that are hard and darker music. Sometimes it means we need to listen to uplifting music. I have that too. Sometimes it means that we need silence and space. Oftentimes it means we need to move our bodies, that, something as simple as going for a walk can be a very effective stress reliever. Many times what happens is with stress, we tend to hold it in our bodies and we don't necessarily know, it's something that our bodies do on an unconscious level, and it's hard to bring consciousness to, but it may show up as a tightness. It may show up as a vibration or flutters. It may show up as I can't eat. It may show up as whatever. It can show up in lots of different ways for lots of different people. But to recognize, oh, my body is holding this stress and I need to get it out some way. And so, shaking out your muscles, going for a walk, doing something like that, doing something active, playing a sport can actually be a great way to release stress, especially if it allows you to put that stress into a productive action, right? And so we need to deal with the stress, and the stress is often dealt with in a physical, biological way. It's sometimes dealt with in an emotional way, and the funny thing is that the logical brain that we want to believe is in charge, often, especially when it comes to dealing with stressors, the logical brain is mostly just along for the ride. The logical brain, once you deal with the biological, it could be that you need sleep, right? So many of us sleep way less than would be most healthy for us. And so that physical, biological, if that's out of whack, it's hard to get the emotional or logical stuff right. So fix the biological. And then figure out, is there some additional emotional stress going on beyond just the bodily sensations and how this is being held in my biology? And then deal with the emotional stuff. And a lot of times that means, speaking truth. It means bringing it to light. It may mean, if some of the truths that you need to speak are uncomfortable to share interpersonally, a step in that direction at least is to get a piece of paper, get a journal, get a notebook, get whatever, and write it down there. Just let it out, right? And so you deal with the biological, you deal with the emotional, and then on some level, the logical starts to come along for the ride, and you And at that point, you can make logical cognitive strategies for things like, I've been feeling stressed because I've been procrastinating at work, or procrastinating at work has been adding to the stress. So what can I physically do? What can I bring intention to and do in order to alleviate that stress? But you do have to be careful, because if you haven't dealt with the biological stress, if you haven't dealt with the emotional stress, and you just try to layer on this logical, like if your logical brain tries to fix it, but you haven't done all the other work, what's going to happen is you're going to add to the stress, because the logical brain and its willpower, like, it is not powerful enough to deal with this stuff. It's not. Like, we want to believe that our logical brain is in charge. But so many times our logical brain will be completely overruled. And so, for example, one decision to play video games instead of do work is not, like, that's not going to, doing that one day, that's not necessarily just a total, like, bad coping strategy, right? But if you do that one day and the next day you say, I'm not going to do that again today, and you want to put your logical brain in charge, but your emotional brain and your biological brain have a lot of stress that they haven't worked out, then what's going to happen is you're going to say you're going to start the day with the best of intentions. And this is speaking from personal experience, although video games are not always my distraction. You're going to start the day with the best of intentions. And then you're going to say, let me just go off and do that for a minute, just as a quick break, and I'll be right back. And then you're going to get lost in that distraction, because it's way less stressful. Or actually, video games are just a different kind of stress, but it is less stressful than dealing with whatever big stress is going on at that biological and emotional level. And so your cognitive excuse that you've given yourself, your logical excuse is, I'm going to go play a break, or I'm going to go play a game for a break. Then a few hours later, you're back or in that space where you procrastinated for hours and you feel terrible about it. And this happens because your willpower tries to overrule the much more powerful emotional and biological forces that are at work. And so I guess if I can give you one big picture takeaway, again, this is unscripted. This is just me sharing lots of reflections on stress and how it's been impacting my entrepreneurship, and the strategies that I'm using to get out of. And by the way, I talked about bringing awareness to this. Like, I don't necessarily feel the need to spit out all of my stressors in a YouTube video. But what I will say is, like, part of my bringing awareness to this is my choice to record a video today instead of a video about copywriting or marketing or whatever, where I'm just talking about stress and how it's impacting my entrepreneurship. So, what I want to say is, if you're feeling stress and it's making it, or even if you don't really understand why you're having trouble, maybe getting started at work, or focusing on the actions that you need to take, or why you're, like, completely lost in work and you're having struggles with family and personal relationships, or whatever those things are. I want you to know that you're not alone, that this is a normal thing. And as humans, especially, the last year plus with the whole pandemic thing, has been exhausting for so many of us. And we've dealt with so much stress, and we've, and whether you're, like, no matter what side you're on, and it's in my opinion, it's stupid that this is going on and that there's sides about it. But that's human. That's humans for you. That's humanity for you. No matter where you fall as far as your relationship with the pandemic and your understanding of the pandemic, the dramatic changes that have taken place in all of our daily lives as a result of this pandemic have created an enormous amount of stress. And the fact that we have so much like always on news cycles, and we have so much like I don't know, like the modern life has had a ton of stressors even prior to, and a ton of things that are, what do I want to say, a ton of things like video games and dopamine inducing internet apps and social media sites and junk food and all these other things that are part of modern life that can be used as negative coping strategies. Like all of these things, there's all these stressors that were already in place, and then we got hit with this like drastic change in our daily lives. And the stress that comes from that has contributed to, I mean, all of us being on edge. And then often all it takes is a couple drops more in the bucket, and the water is overflowing. If you know that metaphor, or it's actually a physics thing like that happens with surface tension of water. But like our bucket was already full of stress, and then a drop or two more, and it breaks the surface tension that's holding the over fullness in. And then we get hit with all this stress, and we end up in a situation where it's just hard to manage. And if that's happening to you, or that's happened to you, you're not alone. So many of us have dealt with our own situations like that, and are dealing with our own situations like that. And it's very real. And the best thing that we can do is set an intention for ourselves that we will use this as an opportunity to learn and grow in our capacity to handle these tough situations, that we will stick with it, and that we will find ways to bring ourselves back to calm, back to centeredness, back to love and positivity, and back to creating the future that we want to create. And yeah, I mean, the rules of the game have changed a little bit now, but the reality is that, for most of us, hopefully life is going to be pretty long, and there's a lot of future in front of us. And we can use that future. We can look to that future, and we can make that future what we want it to be, and we can create what we want to create. And we can use our entrepreneurship as an opportunity to create that. We can use our creativity. We can use anything that we like, all of our capacity, all of our incredible capacity as human beings. We can use our capacities to create the futures that we want to create. And that's still possible today, even in light of all the stress that we're facing. And the more that we are able to be resilient through this stress, and to handle it in healthy ways, and to choose to take it on in healthy ways and not unhealthy ways, the more power we are giving ourselves in order to move forward into the bigger, brighter future that we want. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. My name is Roy Furr. This is a not very marketing issue of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets, or episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. I always ask if you will leave a comment or review with this episode. Let me know on a scale of 1 to 10 how valuable you're finding it and why. What are your takeaways? What are your action items? What are you going to do as a result of this? Also, tap that like button before you go so you get more content like this delivered to you, and so the magical algorithms of the internet will know to share it with more people like you who will find it valuable. You can certainly share this episode directly with folks in your life who you think would get value out of it. And before you go, subscribe here. You can also subscribe at breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com to get my daily emails, including episode notifications and more exclusive content for email subscribers. Typically, those are more focused on copywriting, marketing, business building, sales, etc. But being an entrepreneur is not a one-dimensional thing. And so, my content is not one-dimensional either. So I always aim for 10 out of 10 value. I hope that this stress and entrepreneurship discussion has delivered it. And I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you once again for tuning in to this daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Remember, check out the links with this episode for even more value. Now make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and engage in every way you can to keep this show going and growing and delivering daily value to you. I'll catch you soon for your next big breakthrough.